Aaliyah Bennett turned her dream into reality with her high-end boutique becoming a pillar of the city's fashion district. To her clients, she's the sophisticated businesswoman with impeccable taste and a welcoming presence. What they don't know is that before she curated designer collections, she eliminated threats to national security as an elite operative. When a racist gang begins terrorizing minority businesses, they mistake her polished exterior for vulnerability. They're about to discover that the deadliest predators often wear the most beautiful masks. Be sure to smash that like button, and also do not forget to subscribe to this channel to not miss our future uploads. Now, let us dive into the story. Aaliyah Bennett's fingers glided over the silk of a Valentino gown, smoothing an imperceptible wrinkle. The boutique's morning light filtered through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting prismatic patterns across the polished marble floor. At this early hour, before clients arrived, she allowed herself to savor the quiet. These peaceful moments reminded her why she'd chosen this life. So different from her past. "Miss Bennett?" Maya, her young assistant, appeared in the doorway. "Your 9 o'clock is here early?" Aaliyah checked her reflection in one of the many mirrors lining the walls. Her dark skin glowed against the cream silk blouse she wore, her look styled in an elegant updo. Perfect. The mask of the sophisticated boutique owner was firmly in place. "Send her in, Maya." Aaliyah's voice carried the warm authority that had made Bennett Boutique the most exclusive fashion destination in the city's high-end district. As she waited, movement across the street caught her eye. 3 men loitered near the cafe entrance, their posture too rigid for casual coffee drinkers. The leader, she marked him by how the others angled their bodies toward him, kept glancing at her boutique. His neck was branded with a tattoo she couldn't quite make out. The client's arrival interrupted her observation. Mrs. Richardson, wife of the city's deputy mayor, swept in, wearing last season's Chanel. "Aaliyah, darling, I need something spectacular for the governor's ball." For the next hour, Aaliyah played her role perfectly, the attentive curator of luxury, guiding Mrs. Richardson through selections while Maya fetched different sizes. But her peripheral vision kept tracking the men outside. They hadn't moved. "This is divine," Mrs. Richardson cooed, twirling in a midnight blue gown. "You always know exactly." A crash from outside made both women jump. Aaliyah moved to the window, her stance automatically shifting into a defensive position before she caught herself. Across the street, the men had knocked over a display stand at Mr. Chen's jewelry store. She watched them laugh, saw the owner's daughter rush out to clean up the mess. "How awful," Mrs. Richardson tutted, oblivious to how Aaliyah's hands had tensed. "Those people should be arrested." Aaliyah maintained her professional smile, even as she catalogued details. Combat boots partially hidden under jeans, the coordinated way they moved, the sunlight glinting off what might have been a weapon tucked into the leader's waistband. After Mrs. Richardson left with her purchases, Aaliyah pulled up the security cameras on her tablet. The men had moved on, but she zoomed in on archived footage of the leader. The tattoo on his neck became clear, a burning cross. "Maya," she called out, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her stomach. "Call Mr. Chen. Tell him I'd like to discuss our security arrangements." She walked to the back office, heels clicking on marble. In the private bathroom, she pressed her palm against a seemingly solid wall. A panel slid back, revealing a small safe. Inside lay reminders of her previous life. A Glock 19, 3 passports, and a phone number she'd hoped never to dial again. Aaliyah closed the safe without removing anything. Not yet. But for the first time in 5 years, she felt the familiar tension in her muscles, the coiling of a snake preparing to strike. They would come for her boutique eventually, and when they did, they would learn that some things were more dangerous than they appeared. The morning light revealed fresh graffiti across the Chinese restaurant's facade. Aaliyah stood beside Sarah Lynn, the owner's daughter, staring at the spray-painted slurs and crude symbols. It was the 3rd incident this week. "Insurance won't cover this anymore," Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. "Dad's talking about selling." Aaliyah's jaw tightened. The Lins had served the best dim sum in the district for 20 years. "Don't make any decisions yet," she said, placing a hand on Sarah's shoulder. Her eyes tracked patterns in the vandalism, the height of the markings, the consistency of the strokes. Professional work disguised to look amateur. Back in her boutique, Aaliyah pulled up local news reports on her tablet. A pattern emerged. 7 minority-owned businesses targeted in 2 weeks. Police dismissed them as random acts of vandalism, but Aaliyah recognized coordinated intimidation when she saw it. The bell above the door chimed. Maya rushed in, clutching her phone. "Ms. Bennett, have you seen the video?" Billy watched the shaky footage. 3 men harassing Ms. Thompson outside her hair salon, shoving her against the wall. The same men from yesterday. The leader's burning cross tattoo clearly visible as he leaned in, whispering something that made Ms. Thompson blanch. "Call Ms. Thompson," Aaliyah instructed Maya. "Tell her I'm hosting a business owners meeting tonight. Back room, after closing." That evening, 11 people gathered in her boutique's private showroom. Aaliyah recognized the fear in their eyes. She'd seen it in war zones across 3 continents. "They're organized," Aaliyah explained, laying out photos of the incidents. "These aren't random kids. Notice how they case each location first? Military precision in their timing?" Mr. Chen from the jewelry store nodded. "Yesterday, before they knocked over my display, I saw them checking security cameras." "Police say they're investigating," Ms. Thompson added bitterly, "but my footage accidentally got corrupted after I submitted it." Aaliyah's suspicions deepened. Corrupt cops or incompetence? Either way, the community stood alone. As the meeting dispersed, Aaliyah noticed a black SUV crawling past her boutique. The driver matched the description of the man who'd threatened Ms. Thompson. Later that night, after triple-checking the store's security, Aaliyah accessed a dark web forum through an encrypted connection. Her old intelligence training proved useful as she traced mentions of local gang activity. A name kept appearing: the Pure Knights. Their manifesto made her blood run cold. They weren't just targeting minority businesses. This was phase 1 of something bigger. Her burner phone buzzed. An anonymous text. "Stay in your lane, bitch. Nice boutique you got. Shame if something happened to it." Aaliyah smiled grimly. She'd been expecting this. In her previous life, she'd learned that threats were usually followed by action within 48 hours. It gave her time to prepare. She opened the safe behind her office wall, removing the Glock and a small notebook filled with contact numbers. Some storms needed to be met head-on. As she checked the weapons magazine, a voice from her past echoed in her mind. The deadliest predators are the ones that let their prey make the first move. The Pure Knights were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The sound of breaking glass shattered the pre-dawn silence. Aaliyah was already moving, bare feet silent on her bedroom floor, Glock in hand. The noise had come from Kim's salon next door to her boutique. Her phone buzzed. The security system she'd quietly installed in neighboring businesses last week. The footage showed 5 men in tactical gear methodically destroying Kim's salon. Their movements confirmed her worst fears: stack formations, coordinated coverage, military hand signals. Aaliyah dressed quickly in black athletic wear, her mind shifting into operational mode. 5 targets. Armed. Professional training. She could handle that, but civilian casualties were unacceptable. 911 is experiencing unusually high call volumes, the recorded message droned when she called. Of course. She'd seen this tactic before. Overwhelm emergency services with fake calls to delay response times. Through her boutique's back entrance, Aaliyah moved like a shadow. The salon's security lights had been disabled, but moonlight reflected off the broken glass littering the sidewalk. Inside, she heard Kim's crystal display cases being smashed, followed by rough laughter. "Please," Kim's voice trembled. "I have insurance. Take whatever you want." "Insurance won't help when we burn this place down," a male voice responded. "Consider this a message. Your kind aren't welcome here anymore." Aaliyah's infrared scanner showed 5 heat signatures, 4 spreading accelerant, 1 holding Kim near the back office. The leader with the burning cross tattoo stood guard over Kim, pressing a knife against her throat. Time slowed as Aaliyah's training took over. She activated the salon sprinkler system remotely, her own modification. Chaos erupted as water rained down, the gang members cursing in surprise. In the confusion, Aaliyah moved. The first man went down silently, a precise strike to his brainstem. The second spun at the sound of his partner dropping, but met Aaliyah's elbow instead. His nose shattered, and he crumpled. "We've got company!" someone shouted. A gun appeared, but Aaliyah was already rolling behind a display counter. Bullets shattered mirrors as she counted shots. 6 rounds, standard magazine. The third attacker made the mistake of reloading near a wet floor. His feet went out from under him as Aaliyah's kick connected with his knee. The fourth proved smarter, keeping his distance, but a thrown pair of scissors found his gun hand. Only the leader remained. Kim, still his hostage. "One more step and she dies," he growled. Aliyah stood, hands raised. "You made 3 mistakes," she said calmly. "First, you attacked my friend. Second, you assumed I came alone." The back door burst open as Mr. Chen and other business owners rushed in, armed with bats and pepper spray. The leader's eyes widened. "Third," Aliyah continued, "you forgot to check the ceiling." As he looked up reflexively, Kim drove her elbow back, the self-defense move Aliyah had taught her last week. The leader stumbled and Aliyah closed the distance. 2 strikes, throat and temple. He dropped like a stone. Sirens wailed in the distance as Aliyah helped Kim up. "You okay?" Kim nodded, shaking. "How did you—" "Later," Aliyah said, already moving toward the back exit. "Call the police. Tell them you defended yourself with help from neighbors. I was never here." As she slipped away, Aliyah's phone buzzed again, a message from her old handler. "They're not just local. Be careful." The game was escalating, but so was she. Maya's scream pierced through Aliyah's dreams at 3 a.m. She was out of bed and armed before the second scream ended, bare feet silent on hardwood as she raced down the stairs to her boutique's main floor. The security feed on her phone showed chaos. 6 men in black tactical gear systematically destroying her life's work. Designer dresses were being shredded, mirrors smashed and display cases overturned. Maya, who had been working late on inventory, was pinned against the wall by a man with a familiar burning cross tattoo. Blood trickled from her split lip. "I should have minded your own business, little girl," the man snarled at Maya. "Your boss needs to learn her place." Aliyah's hand tightened on her Glock. These weren't the same men from the salon. Those were still in custody. This was their backup team, and they were better equipped. Night vision goggles, body armor, military-grade communications gear. "Please," Maya whimpered, "I don't know anything." A crash cut her off as another display case toppled. Aliyah's exclusive collection worth millions lay in ruins, but it was Maya's terrified sob that made something snap inside her. Aliyah moved to her vantage point above the sales floor. The skylight offered a clear view of the destruction below. She counted weapons, 4 MP5s, 2 handguns. These weren't street thugs, this was a professional hit team. Time to show them what a real professional could do. She killed the emergency lights first. Their night vision gear would take 3 seconds to adjust to the sudden darkness. She only needed 2. The first man died silently as she dropped from above, her garrote finding his throat with practiced ease. Before his body hit the ground, she was moving. The second attacker raised his MP5, but Aliyah was already inside his guard. A precise strike to his throat collapsed his windpipe. "Contact!" someone shouted. Gunfire erupted, but Aliyah was gone, sliding behind a fallen display case. The muzzle flashes gave away their positions. Rookie mistake. She threw a mirror shard. Light from the street reflected off it, momentarily blinding their night vision. 2 more went down in the confusion, precise shots through their faceplates. The leader shoved Maya aside and opened fire with his handgun. Aliyah counted shots as she rolled between cover. 1 round grazed her arm, but adrenaline dulled the pain. She whispered as his magazine emptied. Before he could reload, she was on him. The fight was brief but brutal. He had strength, but Aliyah had spent years learning to turn men's power against them. His knee shattered under her kick. As he fell, she caught his head and slammed it into the marble floor. The last man turned to run. Ahilia's throwing knife found his Achilles tendon. He went down screaming. "Maya," Aliyah called softly. "Close your eyes, honey." A single shot silenced the screaming. Afterward, as police sirens wailed in the distance, Aliyah held her shaking assistant. "I don't understand," Maya sobbed. "How did you—" "There's a lot you don't know about me," Aliyah said, watching red and blue lights approach. "And, after tonight, there's a lot I need to tell you." She looked at her ruined boutique, at the bodies sprawled amid shattered glass and torn designer clothes. The Pure Knights had just made their biggest mistake. They'd brought war to her doorstep. Now they would learn why her former handlers had called her the Silent Storm. The basement of Bennett Boutique held secrets that even Maya didn't know about. Behind her false wall of vintage handbags, Aliyah sat at a computer terminal that would make intelligence agencies jealous. 5 screens displayed various data streams, police frequencies, surveillance footage, and encrypted communications she'd intercepted from the Pure Knights. "Your old setup still works perfectly," said a voice behind her. Marcus Chen, her former handler, stepped out of the shadows. He'd aged in the past 5 years, grey streaking his temples. "You didn't have to come," Aliyah said, eyes fixed on the screens. "When 6 ex-Delta Force operators end up dead in a fashion boutique, people notice." He handed her a tablet. These weren't ordinary racists, Aaliyah. They're part of something bigger. The tablet showed personnel files, all former military or law enforcement, all discharged under suspicious circumstances, all now working for an organization called Heritage Preservation Initiative. Shell Company, Marcus explained. Traced it back to some very influential people. Politicians, business leaders, old money families. They're buying up property across the city, especially in minority neighborhoods. Aaliyah's fingers flew across keyboards, pulling up real estate records. The attacks aren't random. They're targeting specific blocks, driving down property values. So they can swoop in and buy everything cheap, Marcus finished. The racial violence is just cover for old-fashioned greed. A notification flashed on one screen. Facial recognition had found a match. The Pure Knights leader entering City Hall, dressed in an expensive suit. He was shaking hands with the deputy mayor, Mrs. Richardson's husband. That's why the police response has been so slow, Aaliyah muttered. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya, who was staying with relatives. News saying boutique attack was gang robbery, police closing case. Aaliyah's jaw tightened. Of course they'd cover it up. I can't help officially, Marcus said, but I pulled some strings. Storage Unit 247 at the downtown facility. You'll find everything you need. I'm not that person anymore, Aliella replied, but her voice lacked conviction. They're not giving you a choice. He headed for the exit, then paused. The agency misses you, you know. Best operative we ever had. After he left, Aaliyah pulled up more files. Bank records showed massive transfers to offshore accounts. Building permits were being fast-tracked for shell companies. And most disturbing, a list of targeted businesses with her boutique marked as neutralized. Her encrypted phone lit up with messages from other business owners. More attacks, more threats. The Pure Knights were escalating. Aaliyah reached for her keys. Storage Unit 247 waited. Before she left, she spotted her reflection in a cracked mirror. Designer clothes torn, blood on her sleeve, eyes hard with purpose. She'd spent 5 years building a new life, but the old one had found her anyway. Fine. The Pure Knights wanted to play shadow games? She'd show them what true darkness looked like. The storm was gathering, and this time she'd make sure it washed the city clean. Storage Unit 247 had yielded everything Aaliyah needed. Tactical gear, weapons, and surveillance equipment that wasn't supposed to exist outside of government agencies. Now, crouched on a rooftop overlooking the Pure Knights' local headquarters, a seemingly abandoned warehouse she watched through a thermal scope. Security sweep in 2 minutes, Maya's voice came through her earpiece. After learning Aaliyah's truth, the young woman had insisted on helping. Her tech skills made her invaluable behind the scenes. Confirmed. Aaliyah checked her watch. The Pure Knights were creatures of habit. Every 2 hours, their patrol changed shifts. Perfect time to strike. Inside the warehouse, 20 heat signatures moved with military precision. Through her directional microphone, she caught fragments of conversation. Next target, Chinese restaurant. Message to send. Not tonight. Not ever again. The security team emerged right on schedule. 4 men, armed with modified M4 carbines. They split into pairs, heading opposite directions. Aaliyah's lips curved into a predatory smile. Cameras looped, Maya reported. You've got 8 minutes. Aaliyah moved. Years of training made her shadow silent as she dropped to a lower level. The first pair of guards passed beneath her. One broke off to check a side alley. Perfect. She descended behind him like death from above. Before he could radio his partner, her garrote wire found his throat. She lowered his body silently, dragging it into the shadows. Jenkins, the partner called. Report. Aaliyah mimicked the fallen man's voice perfectly, another skill from her past. All clear. Checking the loading dock. The partner turned back to his patrol. Fatal mistake. A thrown knife severed his spinal cord. No sound but a soft thud. Bootbound, she whispered to Maya. Time? 5 minutes. Eastern pair approaching your position. Aaliyah retrieved her knife, moving to higher ground. These two were more cautious, walking closer together. She'd need a different approach. A small canister rolled between them, releasing purple smoke. Their tactical training betrayed them. Both immediately held their breath, expecting tear gas. But this was something from Marcus's special arsenal. The compound absorbed through skin contact. They collapsed within seconds, nervous systems temporarily paralyzed. Aaliyah zip-tied them efficiently. They'd wake up with headaches in a police station, evidence of corruption planted on their phones. 60 seconds, Maya warned. Aaliyah planted the charges, non-lethal but enough to destroy their weapons cache and intelligence files. As she melted away into the night, the first explosion lit up the sky. Panic erupted inside the warehouse, but by the time reinforcements arrived, they'd find only unconscious guards, destroyed supplies, and a message carved into their command center wall. The storm has come. Back in her basement command center, Aaliyah watched the chaos through hacked security feeds. "Send the evidence to every news station in the city," she instructed Maya. "Let's see them cover this up." "Already done," Maya replied, her voice harder than before. "They hurt my family, our community. Make them pay." Aaliyah smiled grimly. The Pure Knights had awakened something far more dangerous than they'd expected. A protector who knew all their darkest tricks. And she was just getting started. The restaurant burned like a beacon in the night. Aaliyah watched from across the street as firefighters battled the inferno that had once been Golden Palace, the Lin family's pride for 3 generations. Sarah Lin sobbed in her father's arms while her mother screamed at the police, waving insurance papers they all knew would be useless. "They came in just before closing," Maya reported through Aaliyah's earpiece, her voice shaking. 8 men. They made the family watch while they poured accelerant everywhere, said it was payback for helping you." Aaliyah's fists clenched. She'd been across town, following a lead on the deputy mayor's corruption, a diversion, she now realized. The Pure Knights had learned to split her attention. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted message. "Like our response, this is just the beginning. Stand down, or next time we burn more than buildings. PK." Behind her, footsteps approached. Mr. Chen, his face grim in the firelight. They hit 3 other places too. Smoke bombs at the mosque, vandalism at the African market, drive-by shooting at the Korean grocery. No casualties, but the message is clear. "They're punishing the whole community for my actions," Aaliyah said, her voice ice cold. "No." Mr. Chen gripped her shoulder. "They're punishing us for standing together. We knew the risks when we chose to fight back." Aaliyah's tactical mind was already running scenarios. The Pure Knights had escalated to coordinated simultaneous attacks. They had more resources than she'd estimated, and now they were willing to destroy people's livelihoods just to prove a point. Her burner phone lit up with surveillance feeds from Maya. The arsonists were already halfway across the city, splitting up to establish alibis, but something caught her eye, a familiar face among the firefighters, speaking into a radio that wasn't department issue. "Irem, run facial recognition on the firefighter by Engine 3, cross-recognition with military databases." Seconds later, "Match found, former Force Recon, discharged for, oh god, war crimes. They have people inside emergency services." Oh, the implications hit hard. The Pure Knights could monitor first responder channels, track community members through official databases, even tamper with evidence after their attack. A small hand slipped into hers. Sarah Lin, eyes red but determined. "Teacher," she said softly, her name for Aaliyah since the self-defense classes began. "What do we do now?" Aaliyah squeezed her hand, mind racing. The community needed immediate protection, but she also needed to strike back hard enough to make the Pure Knights regret their escalation. "We adapt," she answered, watching the flames reflect off shattered windows like blood on glass. "And we show them why starting a war with this community was their last mistake." The storm wasn't just gathering anymore, it was about to become a hurricane. The Heritage Preservation Initiative's fundraising gala sparkled with wealth and privilege. Aaliyah moved through the crowd like she belonged, her designer gown and carefully crafted cover identity opening doors that tactical gear never could. "Target approaching," Maya's voice whispered through the nearly invisible earpiece. "Deputy Mayor Richardson and his wife, your 3 o'clock. Aaliyah turned, champagne glass raised in practiced elegance. "Mrs. Richardson! The Givenchy looks stunning on you." "Aaliyah?" Mrs. Richardson blinked in surprise. "Darling, I heard about your boutique. Such a tragedy. These gang problems are getting out of hand." "Indeed," Aaliyah smiled, the tracking device in her bracelet already copying data from the deputy mayor's phone. "But I'm resilient. In fact, I'm looking to rebuild in a new location. Your husband's development initiative sounds intriguing." The deputy mayor's eyes narrowed slightly. His wife remained oblivious. "Oh, you simply must talk to Charles about it. He's doing wonderful things for urban renewal." "Got it," Maya confirmed in her ear. "Phone cloned. And you've got company. Pure Knight security detail just spotted you. 3 minutes tops." Aaliyah gracefully extracted herself from the conversation, moving toward the bathroom. In the elegant hallway, a man in an expensive suit blocked her path. The burning cross tattoo was hidden beneath his collar, but she recognized those cold eyes. Aha. Bennett, he smiled, all teeth. Brave of you to come here. Mr. Cross? She nodded, using the name from his military file. Or do you prefer your call sign from your Delta Force days? Purifier, wasn't it? His smile vanished. 2 more men appeared behind her. You've been causing us problems, Cross said softly. This could have been peaceful, property changing hands naturally as the neighborhood evolved. Through terror and corruption? Alia's voice remained pleasant, even as she mapped out attack vectors. That's not evolution, that's extinction. Speaking of extinction, he reached inside his jacket. Alia moved first. Her stiletto heel, specially modified, drove through Cross's expensive leather shoe into his foot. As he stumbled, she used his larger mass against him, sending him into his backup. The vintage clutch in her hand expanded into a riot baton, catching the 3rd man across the throat. Via now. The lights went out. In the darkness, Alia became death in designer wear. When emergency lighting activated 30 seconds later, 3 unconscious bodies lay crumpled on imported marble. She stepped over them, retrieving a phone she'd planted on Cross. Package secured, heading out. Be careful, Maya warned. Security's mobilizing. But Alia was already gone, leaving only unconscious bodies and questions. Tomorrow, every journalist in the city would receive proof of the Heritage Preservation Initiative's true nature, courtesy of Cross's phone. The storm was gathering evidence. Soon it would break over them all. Alia's basement command center hummed with activity as screens displayed the data harvested from Cross's phone. Maya sat at one terminal, her fingers flying across keyboards, while Mr. Chen and other community leaders crowded around a central table. It's worse than we thought, Maya announced, pulling up documents on the main screen. The Heritage Preservation Initiative isn't just about real estate. Look at these email chains. Alia leaned forward, reading quickly. Her blood ran cold. They're planning to replicate this across the country. Our neighborhood is just the test run. They've got similar operations starting in 12 other cities, Mr. Chen noted, adjusting his glasses. Always the same pattern. Target minority businesses, drive down property values, buy everything cheap through shell companies. A new email popped up, intercepted from the deputy mayor's account. Alia's eyes narrowed as she read. They're moving up their timeline. There's a meeting tomorrow night at the Old Maritime Museum. Every major player will be there, including these names, Maya added, bringing up a list that made everyone gasp. Senators, CEOs, federal judges. Now we know why the FBI won't touch this, Alia muttered. The corruption goes too high. Her secure phone buzzed. Marcus calling. Turn on the news, he said without preamble. The screen switched to live coverage. Sarah Lynn's face filled the frame as reporters crowded around her. They threatened my family, she was saying, tears streaming. Said they'd burn down our new restaurant too if we didn't sell. But we have proof of who's really behind these attacks. Brave girl, Mr. Chen whispered. Alia's phone exploded with alerts. Pure Knights members were mobilizing across the city. They're moving to silence her, she realized. Maya, get Sarah's location. Mr. Chen, activate our community defense network. They're not taking another child from us. But before anyone could move, every screen in the command center flickered. A face appeared, Cross, looking directly into the camera. Hello, Alia, he smiled. Nice setup you have here. Did you really think you were the only one who could hack security systems? Alerts blared. Their firewall was being breached. You've been impressive, Cross continued. But while you were chasing our decoys, we've been tracking your digital footprint. Say goodbye to your evidence. Files started deleting themselves across their drives. Maya worked frantically to save what she could. And just so you know, this is real. Cross's smile widened. That wasn't Sarah's only interview today. Check the hospital security feeds. The footage made Illy's heart stop. Sarah lay unconscious in a hospital bed, tubes everywhere. A shadowy figure stood over her, syringe in hand. The clock's ticking, Cross said. Evidence or the girl, your choice. The screens went dark. Alia was already moving, checking her weapons. Maya, try to save what you can. Mr. Chen, get everyone to safe houses. I'm ending this tonight. The storm wasn't just gathering anymore. It was about to become a hurricane of vengeance. The hospital's security cameras went dark one by one as Alia moved through the shadows. 3 Pew Knights guarded Sarah's floor, disguised as orderlies. They never saw what hit them. Maya, status, Aliyah whispered, zip-tying the last unconscious guard. Working on recovering the files. They're good, but I'm better. Got about 60% back so far. Maya's voice was strained. But Aliyah, they're moving something big at the docks. Multiple vehicles, heavily armed. Crisis at a time. Aliyah reached Sarah's room. Through the window, she saw the nurse preparing another syringe. Sarah remained unconscious, monitors beeping steadily. Aliyah's entrance was silent as death. The fake nurse turned and found herself staring down the barrel of a silenced pistol. That's not medicine in that syringe, is it? Aliyah's voice was ice. Hands where I can see them. The woman's face twisted into a sneer. You're too late. The first dose is already in her system. Only our doctor has the antidote. Maya, full scan of Sarah's vitals. Now, numbers scrolled across Aliyah's tactical lenses. Heart rate elevated, blood pressure dropping slowly. Compound detected, Maya reported. It's a modified nerve agent, military grade. They're using her as a test subject. The fake nurse smiled. See? You can't save everyone, Aliyah. While you're here playing hero, our main shipment is... Her eyes widened, realizing she'd said too much. The docks, Aliyah finished. They're not moving weapons, they're moving chemical weapons. Her phone buzzed. Cross's face appeared. Figured it out, did you? Save the girl, lose the evidence, and we still get our weapons out. Save the weapons, the girl dies. Your choice. You assume, Aliyah said quietly, that I can't do both. She knocked out the fake nurse with a precise strike, then pulled out an auto-injector from her tactical kit. Maya, relay Sarah's vitals to Marcus, he'll know what to do, and send me those dock coordinates. Aliyah administered the stabilizing agent to Sarah. I'm going to show them why my code name wasn't just about being quiet. She moved to the window, attaching a rappelling line. When a real storm hits, it hits everywhere at once. As she descended into the night, Maya's voice crackled. Multiple vehicles at the docks, heavily armed. They're loading something onto a ship. Containers marked with biohazard symbols. Good, Ahalat said, already moving. Keep monitoring Sarah. If anything changes, tell me immediately. She touched down in the parking lot where a motorcycle waited. The night air crackled with tension. Cross thought he could force her to choose between saving one life and stopping a weapon that could destroy thousands. He was about to learn that storms don't make choices. They simply destroy everything in their path. Mum's not answering her phone. Maya's panicked voice cut through the night as Aliyah raced her motorcycle through empty streets. I've tried 6 times. Aliyah's grip tightened on the handlebars. Her mother, Catherine Bennett, lived in a small house on the outskirts of town. She'd insisted on staying there, even after Aliyah warned her about the dangers. Pulling up her security cameras, Maya continued. They're dead. All of them. I was stable. Mark has got the antidote to her. But, Aliyah, those weapons at the dock. We'll have to wait. Aliyah gunned the engine. Send back up to the docks. I'm going to Mum's. She killed the motorcycle's lights 2 blocks from her mother's house, coasting silently to a stop. The street was too quiet. No dogs barking, no TV sounds from open windows, the kind of silence that screamed of ambush. Multiple heat signatures inside Mum's house, Maya reported through the earpiece. 5 armed individuals, and 1 sitting figure in the kitchen. Aliyah moved like a ghost through the back gardens. Her mother's prized roses had been trampled, the first sign of invasion. The kitchen window showed Catherine Bennett sitting calmly at her table, teacup in hand. 2 men with military-grade weapons stood guard. Hello, boys, Catherine's voice carried clearly through the window. You really should have done your homework. Did you think my daughter learned everything from her government training? Aliyah smiled grimly. They'd forgotten that before she was Aliyah Bennett, fashionista and ex-executive, she was Catherine Bennett's daughter. The explosion in the front room took everyone by surprise, except Catherine, who had already ducked under her heavy oak table. Aliyah's mother had always believed in sturdy furniture. Aliyah burst through the back door as confusion erupted. The first guard went down to her garrote, the second caught a throwing knife in his gun hand. Catherine emerged from under the table wielding a cast-iron pan with deadly efficiency. Took you long enough, dear, Catherine said calmly, stepping over an unconscious body. Had to make sure Sarah was safe first. Aliyah caught movement upstairs. Company coming. 3 more, Catherine confirmed. They were quite interested in your old room. Gunfire erupted from above. Aliyah pulled her mother to cover behind a bookcase. Maya, status on the docks. They're loading the last containers now. You've got maybe 20 minutes before... A phone rang. Everyone froze. It was coming from one of the unconscious guards. "You should answer that," Catherine suggested. "Might be important." Aaliyah picked up the phone. Cross's voice oozed through the speaker. "Your mother's quite impressive. Almost as impressive as those chemical weapons about to leave port. Tick-tock, Aaliyah. Family or city? Choose." "You know what your mistake was," Aaliyah replied coldly, "thinking I couldn't teach Mum everything I learned." She hung up as Catherine produced a tablet showing dock security feeds. "I already called Marcus," her mother smiled. "His team is in position. Shall we deal with our house guests first?" Upstairs, the remaining intruders were about to learn why storms run in families. The reopening of Bennett Boutique drew the city's elite like moths to flame. Aaliyah stood at the entrance, resplendent in a black designer gown, greeting guests with practiced charm. The restored boutique sparkled with new mirrors and crystal chandeliers, each one carefully positioned for maximum visibility. "Security teams in position," Maya whispered through Ilya's earpiece. "Mr. Chen's people are covering all exits. Your mother has eyes on the roof." "And our special guest?" "Just arrived. Deputy Mayor Richardson and his whole crew. Plus, yes, Cross just walked in. Full security detail." Allier smiled warmly as Mrs. Richardson air-kissed her cheek. "Darling, the renovation is magnificent. But are you sure it's safe to reopen? Those awful gang problems." "Ah, I have excellent security now," Aaliyah assured her, watching Cross case the room with professional eyes. He'd brought 6 men, all trying too hard to look like normal guests in borrowed suits. The fashion show began. Models strutted down the runway, each one a highly trained operative Marcus had provided. Beneath their elegant clothes, they carried enough firepower to start a small war. "Package confirmed," Maya reported. "Cross's men are carrying the documentation about the weapons shipment. They're planning to move everything tonight, after eliminating you." Aaliyah moved to the center of the room, tapping her glass for attention. "Thank you all for coming. Before we continue, I'd like to make a special announcement." Cross tensed visibly. His hand moved toward his jacket. "Tonight isn't just about fashion," Allier continued. "It's about justice." The lights went out. In the sudden darkness, chaos erupted, but this time Aaliyah had choreographed every move. The chandeliers she'd positioned so carefully created a maze of reflections, disorienting Cross's men while her team moved with practiced precision. "Maya, now..." The sprinkler system activated, but instead of water, it released a specialized gas. Cross's men started coughing, their military training working against them as elevated heart rates sped up the gas's effects. Aaliyah moved through the darkness like a deadly shadow. Her gown, specially designed for combat, allowed perfect freedom of movement as she systematically disabled Cross's security team. "The documents," Cross wheezed, staggering toward the exit. "Burn them!" "Looking for these?" Catherine's voice came from behind him. Aliyah's mother held up a briefcase. "Next time, don't underestimate retired librarians. We notice everything." The gas cleared. The lights rose. The gathered elite of the city found themselves witness to a very different kind of show. Cross and his men zip-tied on the floor, surrounded by Aliyah's team of model operatives. "Mrs. Richardson," Aliyah said pleasantly, "I believe you'll find your husband's connection to these gentlemen particularly interesting. Maya?" The boutique's mirrors transformed into video screens, displaying evidence of the entire conspiracy. The deputy mayor's face went pale. "The fashion show continues in the next room," Aaliyah announced to her shocked guests, along with some FBI agents who are very interested in taking statements. Cross glared up at her. "You think this is over?" "No," Aaliyah smiled. "But your part is..." The storm had struck perfectly, but she knew this was just the beginning. The fashion show's aftermath transformed into a war zone in seconds. As FBI agents moved to secure Cross and his men, the lights exploded in a shower of sparks. Backup Pier Knights teams burst through windows and service entrances, filling the air with gunfire. "Everybody down!" Aliyah shouted, already moving. She grabbed Mrs. Richardson and shoved her behind a reinforced display case. "Maya, status." "20 plus hostiles. They're not just here to rescue Cross, they're here to eliminate witnesses." The boutique's layout, which Aaliyah had redesigned specifically for this moment, turned into a deadly maze. Her model operatives shepherded civilians towards secure exits while engaging the attackers with precise fire. "Mum, balcony status." "Prickly, clear up here," Catherine replied calmly through the comm. "But darling, we have a problem. The deputy mayor's making a call, sending you the audio now." A voice crackled through Aaliyah's earpiece. "Execute protocol cleansing. Burn it all." "Maria, what's protocol?" An explosion cut her off as part of the ceiling collapsed. Through the gap, she saw men in tactical gear rappelling down, carrying something that made her blood freeze. "Chemical weapons," she breathed. "They're going to gas the whole block." Cross laughed from where he lay zip-tied. "You didn't think we'd keep all our toys at the dock, did you? This whole neighborhood dies tonight." Arhel's mind raced. The gas would kill everyone in a 3-block radius, including the families who lived above their shops. Time slowed as her training took over. "Maya, activate the ventilation system. Mum, get the civilians to the panic room. Mr. Chen, deploy the countermeasures. Now!" She moved like lightning through her deadly playground. The first team, with gas canisters, never saw her coming. Her garrote took the first man, while a thrown display hook impaled another's hand to the wall. The canister he dropped she caught and disarmed in one fluid motion. "Second team, east side," Maya warned. Aaliyah vaulted over a display case, using a scarf as an improvised swing to kick 2 attackers unconscious. Their gas canister rolled toward the children's section. She dove, catching it inches from impact. "You can't stop all of them," Cross taunted as more men rappelled in. "Watch me." Aaliyah triggered the sprinkler system, but this time it released a crystallizing agent Marcus had provided. The gas canister's release valves froze solid. The Pure Knight shifted to pure firepower. Bullets shredded designer dresses as Aaliyah danced through her killing floor. Every piece of furniture, every mirror, every shadow had been positioned for this fight. A final team burst through the back, carrying a larger device. "Binary launcher!" Maya screamed. "If that goes off..." Aaliyah was already moving, but she knew she wouldn't make it in time. Then Catherine's voice, "Not in my daughter's store." The ceiling above the team exploded inward as Catherine swung down on a security cable, dropping flashbangs with librarian precision. In the chaos, Aaliyah closed the distance. The storm had become a hurricane of violence, and its eye was focused on saving everything she loved. In the chaos of the boutique battle, Cross slipped his restraints. The deputy mayor had vanished too. Aaliyah tracked them through the service corridors, following traces of blood from Cross's earlier wounds. "They're heading for the private showroom," Maya reported through comms. "But Aaliyah, satellite feeds show vehicles approaching. Government plates, but not FBI." "Their cleanup crew," Aaliyah realized. "How long?" 10 minutes max, and these guys, their signatures match. Black Ops teams. Aaliyah pressed her back against a wall as bullets tore through the corridor. Cross had found a weapon. She heard the deputy mayor's panicked voice ahead. "Just kill her! We need to reach the extraction point!" Maya locked down all exits. "Mom, status?" "Ground floor secured," Catherine answered. "Mr. Chen's teams are evacuating civilians through the tunnels, but darling, those chemical weapons are becoming unstable." Aaliyah moved like a ghost through the darkness, counting Cross's shots. He was favoring his right side. She'd cracked his ribs earlier. The deputy mayor's breathing echoed from the showroom. "Amateur!" She rolled a mirror shard around the corner. In its reflection, she caught their positions. Cross covering the main door, the deputy mayor trying to access a hidden panel where he'd apparently stashed a backup drive. "It's over, Aaliyah!" Cross shouted. "Even if you take us down, you'll never stop what's coming. We're everywhere!" "That's where you're wrong," Aaliyah replied, her voice seeming to come from everywhere at once, an old spy trick involving carefully placed speakers. "You're not everywhere, you're right here." She triggered the showroom's lights, strobes she'd specially installed, disorientating them. In their confusion, she struck. Cross fired blindly, but Aaliyah was already moving. She used the deputy mayor as a shield, forcing Cross to hesitate. That split second was all she needed. The fight was brutal and swift. Cross's military training showed, but Aaliyah had evolved beyond simple combat. She was the storm itself, fluid, unpredictable, devastating. His knee shattered under her kick, his gun went flying. When he pulled a knife, she turned it against him. "You don't understand," Cross gasped as she pinned him down. "We're just the beginning. There are others, bigger players." "I know," Aaliyah said calmly. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." The deputy mayor lunged for a hidden gun, but Catherine appeared in the doorway, her own weapon trained steadily. "I wouldn't," she said pleasantly. "Mayor," Aaliyah called, "send the signal." Across the city, evidence was already flowing to every news outlet, federal agency and foreign intelligence service. The Pure Knight's entire network exposed. Their political allies, their financial backers, their international connections, all laid bare. "You see," Aaliyah told Cross as sirens approached, "a storm doesn't just destroy, it cleanses." The Black Ops teams would find an empty building, the chemical weapons would be neutralized, and the real work, dismantling the entire network, could begin. The storm had broken, and in its wake, justice would flower like Aaliyah's mother's roses, beautiful but armed with thorns. Dawn painted the city's skyline in hues of lavender and gold, much like the delicate silk gowns now displayed in Aaliyah's restored boutique windows. 6 months had passed since the confrontation that exposed the Pure Knights. The broken glass and bullet holes were long gone, replaced by elegant displays that revealed nothing of the violence they had witnessed. Aaliyah stood before her reopened boutique, adjusting a hand-stitched evening gown. Her reflection in the pristine window showed the same polished businesswoman the world had always seen, only now that mask felt less like a disguise and more like another facet of her true self. "The last of the documents came through this morning," Maya said, appearing beside her mother. She'd grown in these months, her technical skills now complementing her mother's tactical ones. "The Minority Business Protection Foundation is officially operational." Aaliyah smiled, watching a group of local business owners gather across the street. Mr. Chen was there, his restaurant now thriving. Beside him stood Mrs. Washington, whose salon had become a symbol of resilience. They were all here for the Foundation's first meeting. "The other matter?" Aaliyah asked quietly. "Grandmother's contacts confirmed it," Maya replied, her voice equally low. "Those bigger players Cross mentioned, they're retreating. The evidence dumps hit them where it hurt, their money. Hard to fund a hate empire when every bank account is frozen." The Foundation had been Aaliyah's masterstroke. On the surface, it provided grants, security systems, and business education to minority entrepreneurs. Beneath that legitimate facade lay a sophisticated intelligence network. Every security camera doubled as a monitoring system. Each business workshop included training in spotting organized threats. The victims had become vigilant guardians. "Your mother would be proud," Catherine said, joining them with a tray of tea. Her combat skills might have faded, but her instincts remained sharp. Using beauty to shield strength, it's what she taught us both. Inside the boutique, Aaliyah led the first Foundation meeting. As she spoke about resilience and community, her trained eye noted every face. Some she recognized from intelligence briefings, not threats, but allies. Federal agents, journalists, and even foreign operatives, all drawn to this new power center, all believing they were the only ones who knew her true identity. Let them think they'd discovered her secret, she mused. The best covers had layers, like the intricate beadwork on her favorite gowns. "We rise together," she told her audience, making eye contact with each member. "Every business we protect, every entrepreneur we support, strengthens our entire community." Later, as sunset painted the sky in fierce crimsons, Aaliyah stood in her private showroom. The wall panel that had hidden the deputy mayor's drive now concealed something else, a command center for her expanding network. Maya's software tracked threats worldwide, while Catherine's connections provided support wherever needed. "Another storm's coming," Maya noted, studying the patterns on her screens. "Let it come," Aaliyah replied, running her fingers over a rack of designer dresses. Each garment was a work of art, carefully selected and perfectly placed, just like the weapons hidden within the boutique's walls, the cameras disguised as mirrors, the panic rooms masked as fitting rooms. She had built something unique, a fortress disguised as a fashion house, an intelligence hub hidden within a community center. The next wave of threats would face not just one deadly defender, but an entire network of them, each wearing their own beautiful masks. After all, Aaliyah smiled, watching her reflection multiply in the strategic mirrors. The most exquisite flowers grow stronger after the storm. That brings us to the end of this story. If you love to hear more stories like this, be sure to like this video and click that subscribe button for daily uploads. See you next time.